We go. Hey, welcome to the Executorium Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Gross, at Bill Gross Probate on social media. We get together every week with professionals designed to help executors work their way through the problems of dealing with a trust, an estate, a probate, the things that happen after life, and you're responsible and realize all of a sudden, wow, there's a lot to do here. And one of the vendors on the Executorium Podcast is Marni Blank, Begin with the End. Marni, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
Marni and special guest Penny.
Yes, this is Penny. Penny is always makes an appearance in something I do.
Okay, very good. So begin with the end. It sounds like begin with the end in mind from Stephen Covey. Was that the inspiration, or is it just in general the concept of planning something with the end in mind?
It's both. I mean, when I started to really delve into this work, most people that I talked to really just did not know where to start, that it was this big unknown, end of life planning, thinking about what happens after a loss, and no one really talks about it. And so it really was this idea of, let's begin with the end. Let's talk about it. Let's get this sort of out of the shadows, and we can all feel more comfortable once we sort of start talking about it.
Now, obviously, a good part of your practice is planning before the end, i.e. building the barn and keeping the cows in. But there's also the cows got out, meaning now you have an estate to deal with. And we find that that's overwhelming for many executors, trustees, administrators. Talk a bit about the services you provide to those people who are now kind of overwhelmed with both the emotional grief and then now the administrative duties of being a trustee or being an executor.
Yeah, so I am an after loss professional. So I wear many hats. I'm a lawyer by background. I'm an end of life doula. And what I found is that at the very end of someone's life, and then when they pass, the family is overwhelmed. There are so many decisions that have to come up and to be made. And oftentimes there's a decision fatigue, and there's just an extreme overwhelm because people haven't dealt with this many times before. And so what I found was this issue that at the very end, people sort of get to the point of dying. They have the funeral or the memorial, and then they're left not knowing what to do after that. They're sort of left on their own to figure it out. Yeah. And so I felt like there was a need to be a compassionate ear for people to understand what their individual circumstance is, because everyone has a different situation that comes up after a death, and to work through it. So what I do is I help overwhelmed executors and the family deal with all of the paperwork and logistics that come up after a loss that sort of falls outside of what the probate attorney typically does, but is real. It's time consuming, and oftentimes families just have no idea where to start with that process. And so I come in, we have a conversation about what's going on, what are the assets, what are the liabilities, what do they know, what don't they know, where is their research needed, and we come up with a personalized roadmap of all of the tasks that need to be done and sort of the order in which they could be done in. And I try to take as many of those tasks off their plate as I can.
What percentage of your work is the hard skill of technology, administrative, procedures, processes, legal knowledge in your case, versus the soft skills of just listening and asking questions and paying attention to what's not being said maybe, or what's between the lines?
It's a really good question. I would say maybe 65-35. There are real things that need to be taken care of and done. And depending on the state, there's research, there's different forms, there's different responsibilities on the executor. And so it's a lot of information gathering. And like you said, there's a lot that when it's unsaid, you can kind of pick up, okay, maybe we need to be looking down this road that maybe they haven't looked at before. And, maybe we need to be thinking about this. And who else do we need to be bringing into this conversation, whether it's other members of the family who might have information that we don't have. Maybe it's finding, the advisor, the financial advisor that hasn't been contacted yet. There's so many moving parts and different professionals that can help in this situation. And so it's also being able to find the people who are either already part of the process or bringing in professionals who can advise on different aspects.
So one of the things that surprises me is the disconnect between what customers expect from the attorney in these areas, meaning that the attorney is going to handle all the legal stuff, but where does that end and the rest of the work begins? And I would say there's the soft skills of the motion and the grief counseling and all that, as well as the hard part of the job, not the hard part, the technical administrative part of the job, the other paperwork that somebody has to do, the executor has to do. And it just seems like that expectation is so poorly set that when people take on the job, they find themselves kind of in the middle of it like, wow, did I set up for this? It feels like a whole job. That's what they need, some of these professionals. So describe a little bit when you try to set expectations up front for your clients, how do you explain what that's going to look like?
It really is case by case on what they need. Some people who are in grief find a lot of meaning or it's cathartic for them to take on tasks, but maybe they just don't know which tasks they need to do. And so in that sense, it's more of a coaching role where, I'm helping them decide on what tasks need to be done when, but they want to do them. They find there is some closure in that. And some people, like you said, thought that when they hired an estate attorney or a probate attorney, that person would be doing everything, that they could sit back and wait. And then they would, if they were a beneficiary, they would get that, or, they would have some paperwork to sign, but it wouldn't necessarily fall on them. And then, the realization ends up being that, oh, wait, no, unless you want to pay that attorney, $500, $600, $700 an hour to be sitting on the phone with the bank or, transferring accounts, then that falls on that executor who it often is an adult child who, has a full career of their own, who might have, underage children that they're caring for. And they realize that it ends up being a full-time job and, getting a lot of runaround because they don't know how everything works. And so oftentimes we are setting the expectations of, okay, do you want someone who's sort of, quarterbacking this, getting all of the moving pieces together, but you're taking the lead? Or do you want someone who's taking these tasks off you? Sometimes if there's a lot of liabilities on the estate, I'm calling and negotiating credit card debt on behalf of the individual. It really depends on what the situation is and what do they need and what will be most helpful for them so that they can grieve or they can process or they can, live their life while having the proper support that they deserve.
I think even when there's one child who steps up to handle the administrative burden, they don't think through the soft skills part, the communication, the extra communication. You might say, well, I told them this, or send them an email, but that may be sufficient to transfer information. It's not enough to transfer that I care. And I think that's where the breakdown is so often, that the most suitable person to handle the estate needs to understand that there's more than just handling the estate. There's really handling the people that are also beneficiaries of the estate, the personal side of it.
That's so true. There's so many family dynamics at play. People deal with grief and loss in very different ways, and to be able to communicate effectively with compassion, but also understanding what's going on with these individual beneficiaries or family members, it's a lot. And sometimes there is a need for either a mediation or, an outside facilitator who's helping have these conversations or helping draft, communication so that everyone's on the same page, getting that information, just like you're saying, but done in a way that people hear it and understand it, but also have room to ask questions. It can be a very frustrating and long drawn out process. So how is it being handled with the utmost care for these people who have lost someone?
Now, I know I'll put on the screen your contact info. Begin with the end is the firm. Marni Blank is our proprietor, and begin with the end .co.com is the website that has some fantastic resources on it. In fact, let me just run there real fast. And I think one of the things that I noticed was now you describe what your company does in detail, which is cute picture of you. They're looking like you're ready for somebody to call you. So good for you.
Thanks.
But what I found was on the resources page, some great free downloads that I think kind of demonstrate your knowledge and expertise in the area, both a download on the important documents and assets you have to collect, the 10 legacy project ideas that you have to deal with as well, and then you have an email link for people who want to sign up. And then you also have to shopping. But for somebody who says, I need some help, I'm not sure, is this a customized plan that you call them up and you work out? Is there an hourly rate? Is there a flat rate? How does somebody move forward if they're interested in finding out more about your service?
For after loss, I do hourly packages. So it's usually 5, 10, 20 hours, depending on what the family needs and how extensive the estate is. I also offer a smaller package. If it's someone like we were talking about who really just needs more of that coaching, who needs more of that guidance, then we'll have an initial conversation where I gather all of the information. I create a customized roadmap of all of the tasks based on what they are going through. And then we have a follow-up call where they can sort of ask me anything. So they sort of get started with the process. They see what's working, where maybe they're getting stuck, or maybe they need something else. And then we can have that conversation once they start getting the ball rolling on it.
So I recommend you go to the website, and like I said, check out the resources and the free quiz. And if you're interested in moving forward, you hit the Let's Chat button. That brings up a Calendly link where you can schedule time and talk to Marni about what you need and what your needs are and such. Again, we focus today on when executors have an estate they're dealing with, but also your focus is also on planning beforehand. You get involved in setting things up so we don't have to run off the rails and get them back on the rails, but try to help people plan ahead of time as well.
Yeah, I mean, once you see what happens when people don't plan and what the extra overwhelm or grief comes up for a family when they really need to, find all of the missing pieces because it wasn't well organized, you really start to feel passionate about getting people to plan in advance. And really that is both, your physical documentation and having your wishes in place, having that estate plan in place, but it's really also that whole digital asset and life piece. That is a piece that many people are missing. And not only is there important information on there, but there are memories through photos and videos and other maybe they're not valuable pieces of information, but they're really heartfelt and important to create a legacy.
Well, they might be financially valuable, but they might be emotionally very valuable, priceless.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, good.
Exactly.
Well, look, Marni, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. Again, Begin with the End, Marni Blank, and she can be found at beginwiththeend.co.co. If you have more questions, you can hit the Let's Chat button and get a chance to chat with Marni, which is always fun to do. And maybe you'll catch her when she has Penny, or maybe catch her with not if you don't like chatting with a dog. But either way, Marni, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It's really been a pleasure.
Thanks, Phil.
And for the rest of you, this is the Executorium Podcast. We get together every week and interview professionals that help executors through the process of estates, trusts, probate estates, and such. And you can go on there if you have questions or looking for referrals in different geographic areas we don't service. Love to have you go on there to the Executorium Podcast. In Facebook, we have a group where we continue the conversation. Love to have you there. Again, this is the Executorium is the website that we're talking about. And if you go to executorium.com, executorium.com, there's 4 main tiles. There is the directory of estate providers, there's a directory of government resources, all the different counties and states, forms and such you might need, as well as articles and learning on how to be more effective with that. And what we did today, if you go browse into your particular county, you will find different vendors that can help you be more effective in your job as well. I'm Bill Gross at Bill Gross Probate. This is the Executorium Podcast. Thank you so much. And as always, make today your best day ever.